Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk. Well, I'm very glad to welcome Mike France back onto the show. Mikey, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Sam. Thank you for inviting me.
I feel like we spoke recently, but since we last spoke, there's been two British Prime Ministers, so by my calculation, I've not spoken to you for 8 years.
Well, hang on. I didn't check before I came on. There may have been three by now, and it's hard to keep count.
I'm speaking to you just after your triumphant return from Wind Up in the Wind Up Watch Fair in New York, and I didn't get to go myself, but seeing some of the pictures, and I was constantly getting messages of people that I did know that go. The stand looked impressive, but how was it on the ground for you?
It was a brilliant show. I mean, I think in fairness to Worn and Wound, I think they always put on a terrific show. This was in a new venue for them, much bigger than the previous venue at in New York. On day one, the morning of day one, people were queuing outside, probably a 300-yard queue. All the way back to 7th Avenue from where the venue was. I mean, quite incredible, and it was full every minute of every day through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It was just astonishing, and I also took the chance to go and visit Watch Time for a couple of hours, which was also simultaneously on in New York, as you know. Very different sort of vibe in that show to Worn and Wound, but I think because we were thinking about maybe next October being in both simultaneously as well. But frankly, having been to Watch Time, no, that's not something we'll now do. It's I suppose I would characterize Worn and Wound. Worn and Wound is completely full of genuine enthusiasts. There is no barrier between you and the customer. It's about holding watches, wearing watches, talking watches. Whereas the Watch Time vibe is very much velvet rope luxury. And that just doesn't fit what we're about, really. So we decided, having been there, and it was like deserted when we were there as well. So I think Wind Up is a brilliant show, and I would encourage anybody who can get to any of the events to make the effort. I think the next one is in San Francisco in April. Chicago hopefully will come again in July, and then of course they'll be back to New York next October. And talking to the guys, I think a Wind Up London would be absolutely brilliant as well. So hopefully that's something that will happen further down the line. But a brilliant show, and we were busy. We were busy. I'm only just getting my voice back. I hope your audience can sort of hear me okay. But it's 3 days of non-stop talking is it has an impact on the voice. Yeah.
Last time we spoke, it was at the launch of the Trident 300 Pro. I was, at the time, I managed to get a review copy of that. I was blown away by it. How was it received when it was actually released by the watch-loving community?
Not to exaggerate at all, but it has completely changed our view about Trident Forward. It has been that successful. So as you know, we've spoken about it before, Sam. We're working on a May 24 sort of relaunch of Trident. It would be the T4 evocation of Trident. I think the overwhelming success, and it really has been an overwhelming success of the 300, has led us to rethink what that might end up looking like. And I think it's fair to say the 300 certainly will be an important template for how we move into T4. It will be there for a long time, the 300. It has been quite incredible, the response to it.
I managed to get the green, which I loved the green. Before I saw the green in person, I think I would have just naturally gravitated towards the blue. But is there any early indications of which was the leading dial choice? Did people go for the green one, or I mean, the white one also looked?
Yeah, the white is the biggest color thus far.
Oh, wow.
I mean, these things can change over time. But white is romping. They're all good, but white is the biggest number. That is followed by very close between black and blue, and then green comes not far behind them. Green is also a bigger mix than we anticipated it would be, as is the 38 millimeter. The 38 millimeter has a much bigger mix than we thought, and we'd enhanced the mix from anything the 600 had, primarily because this trend towards slightly smaller cases is ever continuing. And from the evidence we have of the launch of the 300, that certainly seems to continue to be the case, as it were. And we're now already, because of its success, we're planning to build out the collection of the 300. People will not be surprised to hear that, perhaps bronze is on its way at some point in the future. Perhaps sapphire dials may be on their way. And we just created something covering a dial combination that I think will, which it won't be launched until probably July of next year, which is going to be stunning. So yeah, it's one of those. We thought it was going to be big and good because of the early response from people like you who'd seen it, and the fact that we'd essentially sort of tried to create the perfect dive watch by consulting people like our forum, as you know. So we'd built in some pretty big estimates, but it's fundamentally beaten anything we had in our heads, and that's, as I say, meant that we've had to rethink what T4 now looks like, because this is really big. So yeah, pretty good. And it was really, really great to show people over the weekend that hadn't seen it in the metal, the 300. It was certainly of the watches on show, and there were quite a few, but of the watches on show, I'd say the 300 was the most requested to be seen and shown and talked through. And we took a lot of orders for it as well, which was great.
That bezel, it was something else. I know I waxed lyrical about it in the review, but that was a triumph. One watch that I don't need to ask you whether it was a success or not, because by the weight of images that ended up on social media, was the multicolored or the different colored dial, the smaller Sealander. So have all of those sold now?
No, not quite. There's a few red still hanging about, and a couple of green. The yellow's gone, the blue's gone. I mean, yeah, it was the blue went within days, as you know.
Yeah, you had a bit of a Rolex moment with that, didn't you? Because I noticed that ended up on eBay for a few sneaky people trying to capitalize on that one.
Absolutely, and a bit of a scoop for you. I can tell you that. We are releasing a 39 millimeter version in the blue pre-Christmas.
Ooh.
So that's going to please a lot of people, because the waiting list for the 36 mil in blue is just and they're not going to be because it was a limited edition. They're not going to be able to receive one. So hopefully a number of them will be delighted to hear that there's a 39 millimeter on the way, and all of the other people who might prefer a 39 millimeter. The blue was just astonishing.
Had you predicted that? I think you predicted that, didn't you, last time, or at least you had a strong feeling that Lucerne blue might be the.
Yeah, for once we got the order of the colours right in terms of what we thought would sell. So blue fastest, followed by yellow, followed by green, followed by red. The Acer Red is the slowest, although I think the Acer Red will pick up significantly as we get towards Christmas. Great Christmas present.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then another thing that has happened since we last spoke was the re-release of the military watches.
Yeah, the Series 2. Yeah. And again, perhaps no surprises to anybody. The new Sandhurst, particularly in the bronze, is the first time we've done a bronze case of the Sandhurst. Very, very good. And the Cranwell, which is probably the largest of the redesigns of versus Series 1, has also been a resounding success. Albeit over the weekend, lots of people were visiting to see the Dartmouth, and we took quite a surprising number of orders on the Dartmouth. I think what we've learned is that because it's based on the Aquitaine, You've got the sapphire bezel. Um, seeing it in the metal is very evocative for people. As hard as we try to communicate via photography, the beauty of the watch, it's when people have seen it that they kind of sort of instantly fall in love with it. And as the days, weeks have gone by, the sales of the Aquitaine just keep building and building as more people are reviewing it, commenting about it. So the series, the military series 2 has gone down very, very well. But as I say, the Sandhurst, which was the pick of the first series, is again, just doing really well. People love that watch.
And the bronze one's the first time that you've done a bronze bracelet with it as well. I saw a few images of that.
Yes, we've introduced the bronze bracelet, which is, as you know, very few people do a bronze bracelet. People love it. It looks brilliant on the wrist. Of course, it's not entirely only ultimately for the Sandhurst. There's a new watch coming out in January, which it was particularly designed for.
Okay, well let's definitely get on to the main event here, because I've unfortunately, well, not fortunately and unfortunately, I've only seen a couple of images of this watch. I was kindly sent the press kit, but just the few images that I've seen, just absolutely spectacular. So this is the Bel Canto, which I believe you were certainly showing at Wind Up to a select few.
Yes, we we had a couple of watches with us at Wind Up. It wasn't on open display because, as you know, we don't launch it until the beginning of November. So photography was seriously restricted. So it was almost taking people into a back room and showing them. I have to say, well, what can I say? I've actually got one on my wrist. I don't know if anybody can see it, but
yeah,
this is the Bel Canto. It is our first entry into the world of making sound. An audible indication at the hour. It's a full striking watch. It chimes on the hour every hour in the key of D, which is important. It's the Bel Canto translates, as I'm sure you know, from the Italian into beautiful singing. And so whilst it is possible, difficult, but not as difficult to create any sound from a watch, creating a beautiful sound is no small feat. It's quite interesting, really, because there are no books on how to produce a watch that makes sound. You and I could create a tourbillon if we had the watchmaking skills, Sam, which I'm sure you have. We could take a book out of the library and learn how to build a tourbillon. Actually, that doesn't exist in striking watches, chiming watches. There are very few, relatively speaking, even versus tourbillons. And secondly, the few brands that have mastered it are very secretive about the process. And now, having spent more than 2 years working on the Bel Canto, we kind of understand why. Because for us, there was a huge process of trial and error to get to where we wanted to get to, with both the look of the watch, the aesthetic of the watch, and more importantly, the sound of the watch. So it's been an incredible journey. I was describing it to people over the weekend as it's a story of 4 young men, actually, and I don't count. You'll guess I don't count myself in that number. I could be their father, but those 4 men. Frank Stelzer, our technical director, he's just reached his 40th birthday, so he'll be pleased I'm calling him a young man. But their average age is probably, including Frank, is certainly early 30s. And those 4 men are Frank Stelzer, who created the Calibre FS01, which is the movement with inside the Bel Canto. more of his eureka moment in a second, because it really was a eureka moment for him and us. Will Brackfield, our designer, Adrian Buckman, our head of design, and York Bader Jr., who is our head of product. Now, these four young men have spent more than 2 years trying to perfect the Bel Canto. At times a labour of love, at times a labour of hate. I mean, they've had some serious battles because not only did we want to produce a watch that chimed, we wanted to take the interesting, most beautiful parts of that and put it above the platine. Sounds easy to do, it's not. And then even if you could take it above the platine, locating those most important parts so that they look beautiful to the wearer is even more difficult. And of course, that leads to huge tensions between design and engineering, because, you know, every time they requested that even a screw moved, you know, X millimeters or was hidden behind the platine, which often was the case, because what we wanted to do is take a lot of the not so attractive elements of any movement and put it underneath the platine. Then every time those discussions took place, it meant that poor Frank and the guys would have, you know, literally days and weeks of work to try and accommodate that aesthetic requirement. But what they have ended up with, these four chaps, is I think is something very important. It's certainly very important for us. You'll see when we launch the watch, we're calling one of these sort of marketing lines, if you like, is that we've chosen is our finest hour. And actually, I think this is exactly what it is. It is even in some ways above and beyond the creation of Calibres H21. This is for a small independent watchmaker like ourselves to have created something of this ilk. I think is, I do honestly believe is quite spectacular, and I think it is an important watch in a number of different ways. Nobody has produced anything of this ilk anywhere near the sort of price point that we have managed to achieve here.
If I'd seen this watch and not immediately known that it was Christopher Ward, because it's not overtly Christopher Ward is not on the dial, I would be thinking this is MB&F, Ulysse Nardin, something of that caliber, because it looks absolutely spectacular, even from the renders. So I know from reviewing other Christopher Ward watches that in person it's going to look even better, but it's like a step up in evolution, isn't it? It looks, I can't wait to see one in person. The whole design aesthetic of it, I think making these high complications accessible to people as well is a real feat of engineering.
No,
like you said.
I thank you, and I'm bound to agree with you. One of the most amazing things that happened over the weekend was that a customer had travelled some distance to come and see us, and we showed him the Bel Canto. He broke into tears. I'm serious. It had that sort of impact on him. He never thought he would be able to own and wear a watch of this ilk. And it was quite an emotional moment for the entire team, frankly. It is, I do think it's an important watch on a number of levels. And it is a watch without compromise. We've talked about this before, about our uncompromising approach. We adopted the same approach to this watch. So working with some of the partners you're familiar, we've worked with before, people like Armin Strom. Armin Strom created the platine. So the blue platine on the watch was Armin Strom. Why do we go to them for that? Because, well, they're really expert at creating skeletonized watches, and therefore they're brilliant at creating the sort of if you like, plates that you can then work from. And this is not a typical dial, obviously. It's the components are above the platine or the plate, the dial, if you like. Cronode we've worked with them again. We worked with Cronode last year on the C60 concept, and what they've done for us this time is the bridges, the hammer, and the gong. So the really visible elements above the platine are done by Cronode, and as you know, Cronode work with some of the brands that you have just mentioned, and more than a third of the cost of FS01 is in the finishing. Never mind the bridges and the hammer and the gong itself. It's actually in the finishing, and they're spectacularly good at finishing. And then a company called Viquadeco, who we've worked with for many years, they produce parts for our Calibre SH21. And Viquadeco work with people like Cartier, Hublot, etc. They've created some special wheels so that you can see again above the platine here. Because one of the beauties of this is the guys have created the gear chain in the center of the watch in a vertical format, all adding to this beautiful symmetry. As I say, the aesthetic was really important to us to get right here, and I think Will and Adrian have really created a genuinely beautiful looking watch, but not always easy, and not always thanked by Frank and the guys. So, but yes, it's a wonderful watch. It really is.
Do you mind if we just talk about functionally how it works? So it's obviously manual wind, is it? And then does it have a separate mechanism for the actual chime? No, it's not manual.
Well, no, it's an automatic watch. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's based on the base movement is an SW200. Now, we created 10 years ago or so now Calibre JJ01, which is the jumping hour module that Johannes Janker actually developed for us. Frank was working alongside him as his understudy at the time. Frank has since taken over, as you know. And what Johannes created with Calibre JJ1, the jumping hour module, was actually, and still is, as far as we're aware, the most accurate jumping hour module that had ever been created, which is kind of a bold statement. But if you look at most jumping hours, the hour will jump just be quite significantly in terms of seconds ahead of the striking of the hour. Yeah, what we wanted was it absolutely bang on. Yeah, so he created an incredibly accurate jumping hour that changed absolutely on the hour, and to do that, he had to make sure that the power to do that was spread over the course of the hour so that it was accumulated perfectly rather than all being in one sweep. Frank's eureka moment, which I referred to earlier, was he realized that it would be possible, he thought, in theory at least, to modify the jumping hour module and turn it into a chiming watch. 50 new components later, that's what he has achieved. And the genesis of this of the Bel Canto is actually in the Bellora, which we created for Meistersinger.
Oh wow!
I'm not sure everybody understands that we produce most of Meistersinger's watches for them.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
no.
Probably 95% of all Meistersinger's watches are ours.
Wow.
Which is interesting news for some people who don't know. And we created the Bellora for them, which was the striking watch now, which is a great watch. The problem with the Bellora is not a problem, but for us, we wanted to show the striking mechanisms. We wanted to show the hammer. We wanted to show the gong. We wanted above the platine. Whereas Meissinger put a classic Meissinger dial over it. And in the original form, the Bellora movement is not an attractive movement. It doesn't have to be because it's going to be hidden. And that's the journey that we went on to take our Bellora movement, if you like, into the Bel Canto, which was this tension between engineering and design to create the most beautiful watch I think we've ever created. And so that was phase one. The phase two is the, instead of being inside a stainless steel case, we learned early on that the best possible case for resonance of the sound, which is, as I say, really important to us, was to use grade 5 titanium. So the case is grade 5 titanium. Titanium is denser than steel and therefore creates a greater level of vibration and resonance. So you get a much better sound out of it. And actually, although nobody will see this, the work that the design team put into inside the case to create the optimum cavern, if you like, to generate the optimum amount of vibrations was just as important and as and time consuming as the variation of the light catcher case that we that adorns the outside of the watch. So it was there's a lot of things here that most people will never get to see, which all contributed to the creation of this beautiful sounding chime, which, as I say, is in the key of D, which for those who aren't that familiar with the solfège system, which is the system that we're all familiar with from The Sound of Music, I think. D is Re, a drop of golden sun, and I think anybody who's lucky enough to own and wear a Bel Canto will definitely have a drop of golden sun arriving in their lives. That's for sure. When we've shown this watch to people, their guesses at prices, even knowing that it's Christopher Ward, have ranged from sort of 8,000 to, in one case, 30,000. The opening price in dollars for a Vicuna leather strap, beautiful strap, is $3,595, $3,595, rising to $3,975 on the titanium bracelet. And the titanium bracelet gives it again a very interesting different look. It sportifies it a little bit, but for below $3,600 at entry level, as we say earlier, Sam, nobody has come anywhere near this sort of quality of watch, of complication and finishing ever. And that's why I think it is an important watch. I think it does, and that's why one of our customers, I think, was brought to tears. I mean, he genuinely didn't think he would ever be able to own a watch of this ilk. And we all look at, MB&Fs, we look at legacy 1 and 2s and 101s, and we all wow, and these are 50,000, 80,000 pound watches, and this is in the stratosphere, isn't it, for most people, and out of most people's reach. Now, I'm not suggesting that $3,500 is cheap. It's not. It's and it would still be out of many people's reach, but it brings a whole new number of people into potential ownership of something of this ilk, and that's I think we're rather proud of that.
Before we finish up here, is it limited to
300 pieces?
Oh wow!
Although from the demand we've had already, even people wanting to buy it unseen, they've heard about it and haven't seen it. We won't increase the numbers of the blue, the Azzurro blue, but I think we may be forced to bring out a second colour, and that's for sure. But this complication will be with us for a number of years. It'll take different routes going forward. It's such a clever thing that Frank has devised here that it. We're already beginning to think about how we will apply it in a different way at some point in the future. But for the meanwhile, we can just all sort of think and talk and wonder about the bel canto.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us. That was fascinating. I'll leave all the links to the website in the description down below. Always appreciate having you on.
Always a pleasure, Sam. And I can't wait to when you'll be, as you know, you're high up on the list to receive a sample. I'm not suggesting you're going to cry when you see it, but I know, knowing you now as well as I do, I think you're going to absolutely love this watch in the metal.
I'm sure I will. I can't wait. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you all on Casual Watch Talk next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.